Boker Tov. L'chaim. I'm in Pontiac, Michigan right now, and a couple of years ago I was supposed to return to Jerusalem where I live, but my mother still needed me here. I originally came from Israel 5 years ago to redo the exterior of my stepmother's home. My dad had died 10 years prior to that, so he's been gone about 15 years, and my dad, you know, he could do everything. He was a good carpenter and he could fix anything, and so the house was always in good repair. Well, what happened to it, it started to get rot and holes around all the entries and some of the windows, and you could even see light inside coming from the outside, and so it was letting pests in, and it really needed a good paint job. It needed these holes to be filled. And since it was a cedar home, I came in over 2 summers. I redid that, and that's originally why I came. Well, that was almost 6 years ago now, and it just so happens that right at that time, my mother got bed bugs in a complex of 525 units. I now know that they've had a systemic epidemic of bed bugs in this complex for at least the last 10 years. It could be longer, I don't know, but at least the last 10 years. So about 6 years ago, when my mom had them, it was in the 10th month of the year. It was winter time. I wasn't working out at my stepmother's, who is about a half an hour away in a town called Ortonville. I'm speaking to you from Pontiac, in the home where my mother had bed bugs. I'm actually outside in a gazebo that I had built for her because she's 79 now, and she loves to garden and work out, but she couldn't be in the sun, and so I tried to make a place where she could have some shade and still garden now that she's a little bit older. But anyway, she needed me to stay, and so we had the bed bug problem here. One thing, by the way, she had bites all over her, but they don't actually cause bites. What it is a bed bug is like a little doctor. It has 2 needles. One injects anesthesia, the other draws the blood. And they move around, and it takes them 10 to 15 minutes, even up to 20 minutes to feed, and they'll make several holes. So what you have is you have about 10% of the people, you know, and I'm guessing just based on my experience of working with people and talking to people and knowing how many people are in the home, about 10%, my guess, is allergic. And it's good that 10% of the people are allergic, because I've had instances where people, I go in to do cockroaches, and they have a 3 or 4 year bed bug infestation, and they're 80 years old, and they can't possibly have the full complement of blood in them. They probably have 3 pints of blood from having that many bed bugs to be able to feed at will. And so a fortunate home is a home that has someone allergic. And so usually that's how a customer will call me and know that they have them. Bed bugs were named bed bugs in the early 1900s when people went to the bedroom to sleep. And they were usually in the bed because there weren't TVs or telephones and a lot of activity in the bedrooms like there is now. So in my experience, over the last couple of years of doing this extermination with a healthy, safe to eat product, is that 70 to 80% of the time I don't see any evidence of them in the bed. And if I do, it's a live one crawling around, not a nest. And so one of the fallacies that I've discovered in my experience so far is that there's a rule that people that sell home remedies for this, and they never work, by the way, and I'll get to explaining that in a minute. You can tamp them down a little bit, but you can't eliminate them because of how they act and where they're hiding, which is usually everywhere. And so they have a rule, 95-6 rule, And, you know, I laugh when I think about this rule because it couldn't be more wrong. But what the rule means is that 95% of the bed bugs are going to be within 6 feet of the bed. That is certainly not the case. Not at all. What happens is a bed bug is not a pack animal. They don't hang out with each other. They don't need to have others in their nest. So what happens is when they get a blood meal and have come from their nest, which is usually the quietest, most far-flung, less disturbed areas of a home, you know, up into the rafters in the attic and the basement rafters, you know, into the walls, light sockets. They're very flat. They can fit into just about anything. I even saw a video where the guy said that they could slip into an iPhone. I mean, well, maybe they can when they're in their first molting stage, but I don't know. They're pretty flat, and they're pretty, you know, of course, when they have blood, they get fat. But when they don't have a blood meal, they're extremely flat, and they can hide, and they are very, very, very fast. And so what I found is that they're never really usually in the beds. But they're going to be in the bed, obviously. They're coming to that bed, certainly. That's the only place they're always going to come, to that bed. Many other parts in the home they will never visit, but they are always going to visit that bed. And so, of course, I see evidence of them. They lose 40% of the blood right away, so they leave these really dark blood spots, especially where there's a nest, and they lay 1 to 2 eggs a day. And so what happens is if they get disturbed in any way on the way back from a blood meal to, or just foraging to get a blood meal, and maybe they can or they can't, but if they're going back to the nest and they get disturbed, they just go in another direction and find a quiet place, and then they make a nest there. And so my experience is, and believe me, I don't have experience in finding the nest. I don't even try. And it's a fool's errand. If you think you're going to find the nest, then you're wasting your time. Ironically, bomb sniffing dogs are very, very accurate, you know, in the high 90 percentile, I would imagine. But when it comes to bedbug sniffing dogs, their accuracy ranges from about 36% to 83%, depending on different variables. A couple of universities, studies have been done on it. A major pest control did a blind study with several companies and found them to have about a 38% false positive rate. The more expensive companies had low detection rates, you know, below 50%. And so it's very unreliable, and it seems kind of odd to me as well. You'd think if they were that good at sniffing bombs, they'd be equally as good. It's interesting because the Pest Control magazine, the main Pest Control magazine, they found that the worst infestation was not identified by any of the dog teams. It's like 4 to 6 dog teams. I forget what it was. Sometime I'll make a video and I'll read it to you. I have the literature on that. But my point is, it's a fool's errand to try to find them. And that's been my experience. So just from my own experience with my mother, and I'm going to explain to you what happened with her, I developed this system where I use overwhelming force, and I treat absolutely everywhere. I treat it heavy where you don't see, and it's a little messy for a couple of weeks because I make a fine powder on everything to get on the eggs. Because that way when the eggs hatch, they'll die as well. And this powder is fed to all the livestock farms in this country. Every piece of meat you've ever eaten have been fed this powder. It kills internal parasites, and it is super healthy. It's about 90% silica, and every body process needs silica. So when my mother had bed bugs 6 years ago, when I learned of it, I've been eating it ever since. In fact, a Nobel-winning scientist has proven that no cancer can live in a body with sufficient silica. And right now, the latest PBS special, 2-hour special on cancer, claims that 1 in 3 is going to get cancer. And it's a scary thing. And my best friend, who is now 80, just turned 80, she went through her second bout of lung cancer. There was like a 6 or 7 year, stretch between them. And she had breast cancer and lung cancer, I think, combined. And then now she has lung cancer. And she's been through her second major chemotherapy regimen and she hasn't gotten sick, and she's been eating the dirt. And I believe, and this is not proof, this is what's called anecdotal evidence, I believe that she's had a much easier time, not gotten sick at all, and has breezed through these chemos simply because she's eating this powder. And of course, she was kind of off and on. She ate it steady for a while, and then she'd forget about it for a while. And there's a way to stop that from happening. But anyways, people don't really listen to me when I tell them how to do it consistently, but there is a trick to it. But anyways, and she's being more and more consistent, and since we're friends and we talk a lot, I ascribe her great success and the ease of her handling the chemo to this actual powder. But anyways, getting back to what happened with my mother, it was in the 10th month of the year, and it was winter time. Of course, it was cold and snowing here in Michigan, in Pontiac, Michigan, which is like the lower part of the middle of the hand, you know, about right here in the palm. So we found out that they were bed bugs, and the trauma psychologically was terrible. Now, I'm immune, and once again, I'm guessing, but based on what people tell me and what I've learned from my experience, I'm figuring about 30% of the people are immune. The other people get what looks like bites because the hole that they leave, I believe, is going to be there for 2 to 3 weeks. Now, the reason why I believe that is because in all the jobs that I've done in the last 6 years, for 4 years I did it for free, just onesies and twosies, and I don't work that much, but the jobs that I've done, you know, 5 to 10 jobs a month over the last year, and then, you know, 1 to 2 jobs a month the previous year, you know, and all those jobs, which is a lot now, I've found that what happens is after I'll treat, which, you know, I use overwhelming force with something very healthy, won't stain anything, and I literally fill the home in any possible place they could be with it, especially the bed, and then I have them leave a sheet permanently on the bed to hold the treatment really heavy on the top. It's heavy in between. I blow it into really heavy into the box spring. I rub it into the fabric. An old mattress looks brand new white when I'm done and won't stain anything. You can just vacuum it off. I did have a customer who didn't speak English, and she didn't really understand my instructions, and I had to go back. I think it was 6 months later, because she had him again in the bed, and she had vacuumed him all out of everywhere. She was really an, you know, OCD clean freak, and she didn't speak English, so I thought she was understanding my description, but she didn't. So I treated her for free and, you know, got her back up to speed. But anyways, I really use overwhelming force, so I know it works. It works 100% of the time, really, from my experience. I know that. Now, there have been times when I've had a problem. Like in the beginning, I didn't know to treat in the cushions of a couch. Well, I learned very quickly that there can be some in really sedentary homes where, like, somebody might be disabled or it's very quiet, you know, and they might not ever move their pillows or wash them. And so, but I learned to do all of that as well. So I did have a couple of little problems where they were in a cushion where you wouldn't think that they would be. And that's why I developed the technique even further, so that it's absolutely everywhere it's possible for bugs to hide. But anyway, it's wintertime, it's the 10th month, and my mom, is allergic, and she has all these red marks, and she had been going to the doctor for like over a month, several times, trying to figure out what this was, and of course they had no idea what it was. But what it was is they leave these little holes, and so up until about 2 weeks after I treat, on a rare occasion, I don't think it's ever been up to 3 weeks, people will call me and say they're getting new bites. That's how I know there's a hole left there when the anesthesia wears off, because the only reason you get a red mark of what looks like a bite, you know, if an ant bit you, it's going to inject a poison and cause a red mark. This just injects anesthesia, it wears off. Some people, like my mom, are allergic to that anesthesia, and therefore it immediately will form a red well. And that's great that some people are, because most of my jobs are because of someone allergic in the home, and that's how they're alerted to it. And if not, they would just be drinking their blood and endangering them, you know, tremendously. Can you imagine how dangerous it could be to have 3 pints of blood when you only have 5? And I have actual customer who's told me that they went to the doctor and only had 3 pints of blood. So I'm not speculating, but it is anecdotal evidence. It's not proof. But when you have them and you don't know you have them and they get heavy, they can take a lot of blood. And I think it's really contributing to a lot of elderly people's demise. You know, their medicines aren't going to work properly. Their nutrition isn't distributed properly. I mean, I don't know what the side effects to having 3 pints of blood is, but I can tell you this. It's the delivery system. It is God's definition of life. So I know it's very, very dangerous. I had a guy named Castro one time. I went into his home, and he had literally thousands of blood spots from the bed bugs on the sheet he laid on in the bed. And this guy, he was so elderly and so sick, he didn't even know he had bed bugs until he left for a week and came back. And so he was very quiet, a very dark home, no activity, no hardly ever visitors. He never washed his sheets. I went into there, and there were literally thousands of bed bugs. And it takes me a couple of hours to treat bed bug stains and crawling bed bugs as well. And so when he left for a week, they were starving. And so when he got back, they were very active. And see, I found that too, not from people leaving, but when they get really heavy, they're competing for food, and they get really active. And so because it's like every night, certain ones are ready to feed and molt again, and that pack comes in, and it's time to eat, and they get very active. And so that's another way, usually the second most common way people know that they have them is when they get really heavy and they start seeing them move around. Now, when I'm talking to that customer, every single time they think, oh, it's just beginning. It's quite the opposite. In fact, a lot of times I don't even tell them it's really that heavy. They want to get rid of it, and so I just come and do it. But sometimes I have to tell them, like, that's an indication that it's heavy. It's not an indication you just got them, because they are stealth. They are the they are the stealth bomber of the insect world. These things are creepy and psychologically traumatizing little submarines, invisible. You know, is what I would call them. They're like underneath something, and they're invisible. They're amazing how, and this is why they're ubiquitous now. But anyway, I felt so bad for this guy. The whole time I'm treating, he yawned the whole time. I mean, and like, you know, he fell asleep several times in the couch while I was treating, and, you know, I had to move him to flip the couch over and blow it inside the couch. And the whole time I'm thinking, this guy, you know, he's probably about 80, 75 at least. Maybe he's only 65, I don't know. But he looked very old, and he was laconic almost. And so I treated, and he found out about them because he had gone for a week, and they were really, really active. And when I was there, they were crawling everywhere, under the carpets, and it wasn't anywhere near the worst I've seen, but they were very active, let's put it that way. And they had a steady dose of blood from this guy. And so I went and checked on him. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks later. The guy answered the door with a big smile. He was very chatty, not yawning, was doing really good. It's like a whole new man. And I thought to myself, wow, that's the best proof I'm ever going to have that he only had 3 pints of blood when you're supposed to have 5. But getting back to my mom's house, talk about traumatized. In fact, 2 days ago, I met a lady who was just as traumatized as my mom, and I feel so bad for them because they didn't hire me. They're probably going to heat the home, which on paper sounds like the best method because it will kill the eggs. My process or poison won't kill the eggs, but mine does when they hatch because of the mess that I make, the fine powder by blowing out along the baseboards. I make this fine dust. I know it's on the eggs. That's the purpose of making it messy. And so you just vacuum and dust, and it's an easy cleanup, and then you don't clean what you don't see. But anyways, I know it's on the eggs, so mine does work. But, you know, technically the eggs are not dead, and they're not going to die from my process anyways. So, but with heating it does, and so it sounds really the best. But the problem with it is you're going to the same places, same work, same school, same grocery stores. You got them from somewhere. They're great hitchhikers. And so why would you think they're not going to come in on a regular basis? They came in once. Why wouldn't they come again? Could be a fluke. Not likely. Not with them going up 100% every year. It's not likely. And so the likelihood is that they're going to come in on a regular basis. Probably not every day, but maybe once a month. That's all it takes. And then 3 or 6 months down the line, you have an established bed bug infestation. And so heating sounds really good. It's expensive. I had a customer, a lady. I didn't work for the lady that heated her home. But she had them 10 days later after heating her home. I worked for her daughter who still had them during the time she had heated. And it was a tiny home, and it cost her only $1,200. It's usually more than that. And 10 days later, she had them again. So it's absolutely the best on paper, and it makes no sense. It could work beautifully if nothing new's coming in, but I don't think that's going to be very likely. I think the likelihood, in fact, I know the likelihood is going to be that they're getting a regular infestation from a home where they're competing for food and they're starting to hitchhike. Also, I'm going to get into this more in detail in a minute. Actually, it is the poison that is causing them to move around so much. And I'm going to explain that in detail in a little bit. But let me finish about my mom's home. So my mom, she's an emotional person. She can cry at the drop of a hat. So there's no question that she's a crier. A sweet, sweet, sweet crier. But she's still a crier, very emotional, cries about other people's problems she don't even know. But anyways, she cried for 3 days straight. And I don't mean she cried and then she was okay for a half hour and cried. No, she cried for 3 days straight, like this lady I saw the other day. And they haven't called me back, and I feel bad for them. I think they're going to go with the heating because she's an OCD. She didn't want any kind of a mess. You know, my procedure is not for everybody, but I can tell you this. Nobody cares about having a vacuum and dust in 2 weeks when they got bed bugs. None of my customers care because they know when they see how this is done, they feel safe. It's kind of ironic. It's kind of counterintuitive. But when I come and they see it absolutely everywhere a bug can hide, they've kind of calmed down. They say, yeah, if this stuff works, they sure ain't got no chance. So it's oddly comforting to them, the mess that I make. And it really is an easy cleanup. And I don't recommend that you clean it all. Just let it blow away because it has a positive charge, and the reason why they feed it to the animals is because it removes all the negative things in the body, the negatively charged things, which are bad. God set up the body where positive is good, negative is bad. So they feed it to the livestock farms in this country because it's strong positive charge. These are diatoms from the water, and they have a cellular structure like a little tunnel, and with a super powerful positive charge. And God set up the body where positive is good, negative is bad. So all your viruses, colds, flus, and all the negative heavy metals and all the things that causes disease and problems, they're negatively charged, and so they're sucked right into this positively, powerfully charged cylinder and eliminated from the body. Well, think about it. An animal is wet inside. Well, when I spray it on the home and I make this fine mist on it, and you can't even see it. I mean, it's so fine. You really can't see it in 99% of the places that it's at. It's neutralizing, sanitizing. It is absolutely one of the healthiest things you can do to your home. Forget about the bugs. And I have customers and experience with having gone back to customers and have been amazed at what they're telling me about the health benefits from this. Now, granted, this is not proof. These are just my stories of experience. And from them, I'm forming the opinions that I'm giving to you. It's not science. It's called experience. And that I could be tricked. I could be wrong. But I've seen enough where I know how it's going to go. I know what happens now. This is what I believe. So anyway, the health benefits are tremendous just to sanitize the home and protect you from the bad microbes that are in it. Also, I have this hand pump backpack that I pump into the box springs real heavy, and I pop holes in the lining of the couches and chairs, and I pump it real heavy in there. And any holes in the home, you know, into the walls, any openings like under the sink where the pipes come in, I pump it in those places. You know, that's where all the bugs are going to come from, you know, like the cockroaches from the outside and all that. And it cuts the bodies of those too. This is really well known. I mean, you can buy it at Home Depot with poison in it. I would never use poison. I've never bought it with poison, and I never would, because I don't believe in poisoning, because there's a verse in the Bible that says, I will destroy those who destroy the earth. And even though they can't make a direct link between the poisons that they use for pesticides and the neurological damage of children, I know that we are, because of convenience, being tricked all the time into making our environments just totally toxic. I mean, just look at third world countries. They don't have asthma. Why do we have asthma? Because we're too darn clean. And so by making this mess in there, it's super healthy to breathe, I spray it into my pillow to kill dust mites so that my asthma's not bad. And I have asthma, and I don't even know I have it anymore. And if I'm breathing heavy, which happens sometimes, and when I was a kid, I didn't really get diagnosed with asthma until I was in my late 30s. Until after I had smoked for 10 years, and after I quit smoking, then I got asthma. But always my life, I breathed heavy. And I didn't know it was asthma. I thought it was just normal. I was a heavy breather. And so I don't breathe heavy like that like I did in my youth anymore. And if I'm breathing heavy when I go into a job, by the time I'm done, I'm breathing clear. And so it's really amazing how really healthy it is in so many ways. Actually, that was one of the first things I researched when I was researching this powder. I looked at the miners and I said, well, if these guys are coming down with bad illnesses, since they've been mining this stuff for hundreds of years, you know, they've been using it for the longest, and it's fed to every livestock farm in the country, certainly we would see what kind of precautions that they take. They have no reported incidences of any lung difficulties, cancers, or anything, because this stuff is healthy. It's what chemically is called inert. It doesn't react with anything. And that's why it won't react with your medicines when you eat it. It's a medium through which reactions can occur. That's why it's so healthy to eat, because every body process needs silica. And we only get 60% of the silica that we need now because of monocultures, and our food is deprived of its natural nutrition, but mainly because of processed foods. We're only getting about 60%. So my own customers are telling me high blood pressure that they've had for 10 years, gone in 2 weeks. And in the testimonials that I give to every customer, 50 pages, it's like it cures everything. But it doesn't. It's just we need this silica for every body process. It's 90% silica. I actually give a sample to my customers that I fortify with kaolin powder and arrowroot for minerals, because we also don't get enough minerals. I make a full line of health products. I have, because when I converted to Judaism 19 years ago, I couldn't use anything hardly you could buy on the shelf because of animal products. You know, that was before it became really big not to have, you know, animal testing and animal products and all of that. And so I had to make my own skin creams and deodorants and even toothpastes and all that, although I just use baking soda to brush my teeth now. But I use a lot of natural things. You know, I use like Dr. Donner's magic soap for my shampoo. For my conditioner, I use red wine vinegar. And, you know, I brush my teeth with baking soda. Went to the dentist after 17 years, no cavities. So figure it out. But mainly it's because I eat this powder. I take a couple of scoops every time I brush my teeth. Oh, and by the way, that's really the key. You have to tie this to a habit that you already have. And since you're going to brush your teeth, you just put a bag like this, a cup with a spoon, so you can give yourself 2 big tablespoons every time you brush your teeth. So if you link it to a habit you already have, that's the key. That's why my friend who had cancer probably would have avoided this cancer. How would I know? But I'm just guessing, because she's had such an easy time with this second bout of it at a really advanced age. She's 80. My thinking is that if she would have tied it to her brushing of her teeth, did it more regular, she might have even have avoided it. And so that's, like I say, anecdotal evidence. But I make this. It's the same powder that I use. I just add arrowroot and kaolin because they're so packed with minerals. But anyways, you tie it to a habit you already have so that you can eat it the rest of your life, because we need this in our diet. It's super healthy. And, you know, of course, I give a sample to the customers. I give them the 50 pages of testimonials, which I have that right here. Here's the 50 pages of testimonials that I give them, and they can go to the website and they can buy a kilo, which is 2.5 pounds, for about $30. I sell a kilo that I fortify. They don't fortify theirs, for $12.60, and I make it dirt cheap because, you know, I want them to use it. It's just I want them to be healthy. I want to spread blessing. That's the whole purpose of it. I'm curing a plague. I'm doing God's work. This is what I wouldn't even be working. I'd be studying. I'd be living in Israel. I'd be a tour guide, telling the Bible stories. There's no reason why I would be in the pest control business. But that's why I started to tell you about my mother, because the reason why I started to do it professionally 2 years ago, when I was supposed to go back to Israel and I didn't, is because I said, well, you know, people are suffering out there, and now I need to make a little money. I've been here already, you know, 4 years. I need to make a little bit of money, and I can help some people. And so other people would be doing it, and I'd just be one of many, and I'd make a little money on my way back home. Well, the reason I'm still here after 2 years is because I'm shocked. Nobody does it, and I'm telling you, nobody's going to do what I'm doing. They're not going to do it because bedbug infestations are big business. They don't want to cure it. They don't. It's big business, and it's actually the poisons in these home remedies and in these poison companies that are causing the epidemic to go up 100% every year, and I'm going to explain that in detail shortly. But let me finish about my mom's house, this house right behind me, which is like a condo with condos attached to either side. So my mom, she cried for 3 days straight. It scared me. Now, my mom is a Baptist that doesn't attend church. My sister is, you know, she believes in God. Basically, that's all you can say. She doesn't attend church either. She doesn't like all the laws, the Jewish laws. So she's never going to be Jewish, my sister. And my mom either, but she's not anti-Jewish. Let's put it that way. Like, well, I don't want to say. But anyways, I know that I'm the head of this home. So when I saw my mom cry for 3 days straight, I said, this is my fault. You know, and at the time, she was dumpster diving, and me and my sister, we didn't like it. You know, she was getting food for us from the dumpsters, and I wasn't working at that time, not trying to work, so I had very little money. I was just studying, and because I'm a tour guide and I do biblical calculations, and I was doing my thing, and I read the Bible 3 hours a day. I wasn't looking to make money, and I'm still not looking to make money. You know, I started this business. People call me all the time that can't even afford my fee, which is a quarter of what the poison companies are, or even less. A home is generally $1,000 to $2,000. I charge $252 in Pontiac because I live here and I don't advertise, $304 in Oakland County, and $378, and I'll go as far as Traverse City because I have a brother that lives there and I can stay at his house, and I go as far as Toledo, Ohio because I have a brother that lives in Monroe. And so I can stay at his house. But it's only a 2-hour drive there and a 4-hour drive to Traverse City from where I'm at. But anyways, that was my situation at the time, and I knew it was my responsibility. And so we had one of the major pest control poison companies coming out, and they were treating twice a week, and she was getting bit the whole time. And now she was, you know, having crying jags is what it was. And I said, okay. And they gave us a ton of work. Now, I have to tell my customers they got to vacuum and dust, and I make a mess. But the amount of preparation and work to get ready for a poison is 10 times, 20 times the amount of work. I don't see how they do it, these elder people. They can't do it. And what made matters worse, not only was my mom crying uncontrollably, but at the end of all this work, you know, clean all the pictures, pull everything off the walls, move everything off the walls, take out all the canned goods, wipe everything down. I mean, it was an immense amount of work, and at 70, I think she was 4 at the time, 75, there's no way she could do that. Thank God I was here. I did everything that they asked, and yet she was getting bit for 3 weeks. And so, but during that, like, second week, you know, after we saw that the poison wasn't stopping her from getting bit, I got on my hands and knees and I poured my heart out to God, because the reality is everyone assumed, or anybody who had any knowledge of it, our family assumed that it was from the dumpster diving or buying used furniture at the resale shops, which she's like a super shopper. She goes and buys all this wonderful stuff for 50 cents and $1 at all these resale shops. I mean, she's just a great shopper, and she enjoys to do it. And I used to go, I read my Bible 3 hours a day. I'd go sit for 3 hours and read my Bible and do my, you know, my thing, studying and doing biblical calculations and all the stuff I used to do. And she'd be walking around the resale shop for 3 hours. So she was like this super shopper, and she was into dumpster diving and all of this. And so we assumed, I didn't assume, I knew that that plague could not enter my home. I knew that I was the head of the home, even though my sister would never even give me the benefit of the doubt as to be a leader in the home, that's for sure. And my mom certainly won't be led by anyone. In their eyes, I was not a leader, and in the practical functioning of the home, I didn't make the decisions. But I knew I was the spiritual leader of that home, because I'm the one that walks with God, and I'm the one that obeys God. And so I got on my hands and knees, and it scared me. My mom crying for 3 days straight, and I poured out my heart to God, and I cried, man, real tears. And it upsets me now even to think about it, but I poured out my heart to God. I said, God, this is my fault. A plague. You know, there's 3 judgments in the Bible. There's the sword, pestilence, and famine. Okay? This was a plague. This is a judgment. And I knew that that judgment was upon me. And so I'm telling you this so that you'll understand why I know what I know. I know it from reading the Bible 3 hours a day for 19 years. I know what's in that book. I know that this is a judgment from God, and I know it's my responsibility as the head of the home. And so I apologized to God. I poured out my heart, and He rewarded me with this knowledge. Now, before that, before I found out about this, diatomaceous earth and the food grade that I use, fossil shell flour, I took everything out of the home. Wasn't working. She got bit for 3 weeks with the poison company. So I took everything out of the home. I didn't have any money. I hadn't worked in several years. I just redid my mom's house. I worked for my brothers and helped them out in their businesses and did things like that. But I wasn't making any money. And so my brother, my older brother, he bought a couple of canopies. I didn't have this gazebo out here at the time. And I set up these, 10 by 10 canopies, and I took everything out of the house. My brother paid for my sister and my mom to go stay at a hotel room for a week, and I bleached every wall, every ceiling. There's one small linen closet, and the closet where the water heater is, which is also very small. I didn't do those 2 rooms, but I poured bleach water into the carpets. My hands were, and I didn't wear gloves, my hands were so tore up. They didn't heal for like 3 months, get back into shape for like 3 months. But I washed every ceiling, every wall with bleach water, poured it into the carpet, and we still had them. And I'm going, and then I poured out my heart to God, and I said, it's my fault. Please, I'm willing to correct whatever sin it is that I have done that caused this plague to enter a home that you've given me the responsibility to protect. I'm willing to change. I'm willing to do it. Please show me how to cure this plague. And He did. He gave me a cure. A lot of it is the technique that I use. I mean, people try this powder all the time and they're not successful. And I know why, and I don't want to give away all my trade secrets, but between me and you, it's not rocket science. My method is basically the dummy method. I just put it everywhere. And, when you see how much work is involved in preparing for poison, you realize it's much less, actually, just to let me make a little bit of a mess. It won't stain anything, and it's just a vacuum and a dust. But the key is you leave it heavy where you don't see, and I really use overwhelming force. And so it's a lot of it is the technique, and that's why people aren't successful with it. But they're mainly not successful because of the poisons that the pesticides that they get in it, whether a natural one with a smell or a poison which they have a smell. So anyway, it didn't work. So finally, I poured out my heart to God. I learned of this. I used it. Finally, we had relief. I was a lot messier doing our house 6 years ago than I am now. I just covered the whole floor, and we put runners down, to walk, so we wouldn't just trample it everywhere. It wouldn't matter. It was everywhere anyways. And we didn't clean. We were so traumatized by them, we said, no, we want this protection. Because it worked. It was finally relief. We had them so bad that they saw them 3 days later at the hotel room. Apparently there were eggs in my sister's hair or something. I don't know. So anyways, it was just terrible. It was traumatic. And many of the people watching this video who's had them, they know what I'm talking about. Anybody who hasn't had them doesn't appreciate it. They're never going to understand what I'm telling you, what we lived through, and what a person who's had bed bugs has lived through. People have burnt their houses down trying to get rid of them. It's a plague. And they can't afford, poor people cannot afford $1,000 to $2,000. They can't. My procedure is the best for the rich guy, but it's absolutely necessary for the poor man. He has to have this because he's not going to get relief. I have customers that have moved 3 times in 3 years, and it just, 6 months later, they're back with a vengeance because they're taking the eggs with them. So there's just no way to do it. You can tamp them down, but you can't stop it. You need overwhelming force. They are smarter than us, and they are much sneakier than anything you've ever dealt with. And you should just be thankful you have them, so that you're not like Mr. Castro, who is practically so lethargic that he couldn't even stay awake for 5 minutes and talk to me during a 2-hour treating of his home. So you don't want to be like that. And that's not the only person. I've had several people that were in really bad shape, and then when I treated, got better. And I know it's because of how healthy this powder is. So anyway, that didn't work, taking everything out of the home. So we learned of this, and in 4 months, it was gone. But it doesn't leave. It's so fine that it just blows into all the nooks and crannies right where you need it. So at that time, I wasn't treating the attic. We didn't have a basement. So it just went into the walls, and it went into the baseboards, and it just disappeared. And that's why I tell my customers, you don't have to clean it up. It's going to disappear. But it's like time released, because now the way I do it, my technique, because I put it heavy behind furniture, and a very fine mist that you cannot see is always coming out when a little wind blows behind that furniture, or a door opens, or an opening the door in the back and one in the front, and it gets a little bit of a draft, especially in the summertime, or when air conditioners blow it around. It's like just going in there and killing all the bad microbes in the home, making a much healthier environment. So it's like the healthiest mess you could ever make. It's really worth doing, and it's much less work than being treated for poison. So, but anyways, it's hard to get people to understand that, because the thought is convenience is kicking our ass. I mean, think about it, man. Everything's got to be so convenient. We're using microwaves and just destroying the nutrients in our food. People that cook with microwaves, they're just destroying the nutrients in it. The live enzymes, if there are any, and 90% of the food you get in the supermarket is dead anyways. But I don't eat processed food. I eat according to my blood type, and I'm very careful about what I eat. If it's got more than 3 ingredients, buddy, it ain't going in my mouth. But anyway, that's mainly because I'm Jewish and the dietary laws that I'm so careful. And so it just disappeared, but it works, and it works wonderfully. But we think a guy comes in with a poison, we can't see it, so it's clean. I come in with a white powder, looks just like flour, won't stain anything, and now I'm accused of making a mess, in a sense. Oh, you've made a mess of my home. You've done violence to my home. But in reality, you can see mine, but it's the clean one. You can't see that, and it is causing serious, serious problems in that home, damage. And it's not curing bed bugs. It's good for other things. It can be fine for pest control, used regularly for pest control, because it's a poison, kills things. And it'll kill you too. Certainly make you sick and weaken you if not. Okay, so anyways, it's counterintuitive. I see a mess, but yet it's clean. I don't see a mess, and therefore it must be clean. It's counterintuitive. It's just part of this culture that we have, that everything clean is good, and it is not. I'm telling you, just think about how simple this concept is. You buy the antibacterial soap. You have it on your sink. You have the antibacterial wipe at Meijer's before you get your cart that somebody else has pushed around. Those other 100 people that have touched it. Okay? So we're taking all these cleaning, poisonous, toxic chemicals which kill these microbes, and they kill 100% of them at times, or in the high 90s. But what we don't realize is that they're killing everything that's good too. You know how many good bacteria there are in your mouth? Over 600. You know how many good bacteria in your stomach? Geez, I forget what the total was. It is like 30,000, 40,000 in your gut that are good for you. The fauna in your digestive tract and in your intestines. This fauna, if you take a regimen of antibiotics, it takes about a year, year and a half for your fauna to come back, and we need these microbes. And so we're rubbing all of this antibacterial on everything, making everything spotless clean, and actually what we're doing is we're damaging ourselves, because we're killing all the good microbes that are around us. But with the diatomaceous earth, it sucks in, because of its positive charge, all of the things that are bad for us, all of the nasties, because they're negative charged, and yet harms none of the good. So when I go to the dentist, after using it for the last 6 years, eating it every day and putting it on my teeth, which I brush my teeth a lot, I brush every time I eat, so I'm going to brush from 3 to 5 times a day. And I'm using good heaping spoon, whereas if you do it once a day, it should be at least 2 tablespoons heaping. I'm doing it every day, and I go to the dentist to have a bridge, or have a filling that fell out replaced have a cavity. 0 cavities after 17 years. And I don't believe it's because I didn't have a cavity. I believe it's because for 4 years prior to that, I've been eating diatomaceous earth. That's what I believe. Because, come on, I'm going to have something in 17 years of not seeing a dentist. And so, and I didn't. But it's an indication of my own personal experience of how healthy this powder is. And that's why I have success with my teeth. I have success with my health. And I'm protected against the nasties of life without destroying the good things in life. So this is what tricks us. The truth is what tricks us. The truth is what hurts us when it is partial, when it is incomplete, and when it is taken out of context. And so it's the truth that poison kills bed bugs that's harming us. It's the truth that an antibacterial soap is killing 98% of all the bad germs. That truth is killing us because it's killing 98% of the good bacteria that we need to function, that live on our skin and in our eyes and every part of our body, internally and externally. And so, thank God for setting up the body where positive is good, negative is bad. That rule right there means that this is a gift from Him. It means that this is His method for comforting and protecting and bringing healing to His people. And that was why Christ took the stripes. Yes, I'm Jewish, and I believe in Christ. I believe He came twice in the form of Melchizedek to the Jews, and they have God directly, Yah, which they are to call Him by His title, Yahweh. And when God ordered the Jews to keep the Gentiles out of the church, He was protecting the Scriptures. You'll see that in Romans chapter 9, 1 through 3, it says, what's the value in being Jewish? Much in every respect. In the first place, they were entrusted with the utterances of God. And so the Bible came down to us pure because He ordered them to keep the other people, the pagans, out. And that's what they still do today. It's hard to convert. They're trying to keep you out. And that's God's will, and it protected the Scriptures through the generations. So then He sends Christ, and the same teaching as the Old Testament in the New Testament, but written in Greek so that the Jews would be blinded so that they wouldn't have to violate His law of keeping them out, and then that God could come to them separately. And that's why there's nothing in the New Testament I cannot show you in the Old. There's no law that we are supposed to obey in the Old Testament that we do not obey today and is told to obey from the New Testament. They're the same book. They're the same teaching. But by the very act of writing it in Greek, He blinded the Jews because He gave them a special order to protect the Scriptures to keep everyone out. And so that's how He got it down through the generations and didn't allow the book to be changed and perverted. And so now God comes first to the Jews in Melchizedek, who Abraham paid a tithe to. He was a priest of Salem, without father, mother, or ancestry, without beginning of days or end of life, made to resemble the Son of God, a priest forever. They're the same person. And so now He comes to save the rest of the world, and I became Jewish from reading the New Testament because it taught me to obey the law. And so, sorry about getting off on that little tangent there, but suffice to say, I made a mess of our home, and it turned out beautifully. And I've been making a mess of other people's homes ever since. You know, and I haven't worked for a lot of people, and it's not everywhere, but the reason why I'm so successful in eradicating them, no one's ever called me a month afterward and said they still have them. There's people that's called me and said they've seen them after a month. But that's only because they're coming in every day and they're finding them dead or very laconic and slow just before they die. Okay, and that's why it's a beautiful method, because they can come in every day, they're just going to die. And since they're going to die slowly because it dehydrates them, they'll end up in a weird place because it also disorients them. If you've ever been dehydrated, you get incredibly sick, and you can die from it, easily die from it. You can't go 3.5 days without water. One time, in my ignorance, I fasted a lot in my life. Once for 42 days I fasted, just water. Twice for 30 days. 10 days I did once with no water. I felt so bad. Moving my little finger took all the effort. I was so sick. I didn't know we're not supposed to have water for 3.5 days. And I fasted for 3.5 days, for 3 days, many, many, many times. But I have a lot of experience with fasting. And I know what that feels like not to have water, having fasted for 10 days without water. It's terrible, man. And you feel terrible like day 4. I mean, really bad, really bad. And so they get disoriented and they end up in the bathroom, which is, where they would never be. And so people will see them after I treat, but nobody will call me after a month and think they still have them. That's for sure. They're not going to see them in any kind of numbers at all, other than the one that might end up dead in the wrong place because he came in after the fact. And so it really is a wonderful thing. It works really 100% of the time from my experience. And, I'm just one man, and my experience is limited. It's what we call anecdotal. It's not proof, but it's what I know. It's what my experience informs me. And we know that a wise man seeks many counselors, and I have on these matters. And experience is the best teacher. We know that from life. I mean, we know that instinctively. This is how we've always learned to stop making mistakes in our life. And so I've seen what I've seen, and I act accordingly, and I'm successful with it. And that's why I know it's true, even though I can't prove it. I can't prove to you the link between a child's neurological damage and poison, and neither can the greatest scientist. It doesn't mean it's not happening. All I can tell you is something's bad for you, avoid it. Something's not bad for you, why avoid it? That's all I can tell you. And that's all you need to know. God is not the author of confusion. It has to be simple, or it's not from him. It has to be clean. It has to be pure. It cannot damage the earth, or it is not from God. It is not from him. And I got to tell you the story about this lady. Now, I charge less than 1/4 the price of the poison company. Don't let me forget to tell you why the epidemic's going up 100% as a result of the poisons. I'm going to make that point. First, I want to tell you about this lady. She has multiple sclerosis, I found out a few days ago. But anyways, she's young. She's only 40 tops. Probably less than 40. Well, 1 week shy of a year, and I charge, like I said, less than 1/4 of the poison company prices. A major poison company came to their house, and the clutter and the mess in that house was so bad, they wouldn't even give them a price. They knew they couldn't be successful in the house. I mean, every closet was just jammed with dirty clothes. Every open, hidden space in that home was jammed with dirty clothes. I mean, it was a mess. There was so much clutter in the rooms that the mother and the father brought a mattress out and put it in the living room on the floor to sleep every night because there was no room to put a mattress down in the bedroom. And it was filthy. It was filthy. Upstairs, there was a boys' room and a girls' room, and it was filthy. There was 2 mattresses in the boys' room, and there was dog poop on the mattress. You know what I mean? And the boys sleeping in the corner with dog poop on the mattress. Between the 2 mattresses was 3 or 4 piles of dog poop. They never cleaned it up. I mean, it was horrendous. It was horrendous. And I treated the home, and then 1 week shy of a year, they call me up and say, we have redone the upstairs, got 3 new beds, got a new couch that was given to us. We have bed bugs again, and they practically redid their whole house. Remodeled the kitchen, did a ton of work. And so I charged them only $72 to come out and treat, just like I would have charged if they were in Pontiac or anywhere else, $378. But anyways, or $252, $304, or $378, which is my normal price. So anyways, I go in, and for $72, 1 week shy of a year. Because if it would have been 1 day over, I would have charged them full price. It's in my literature that I give them. But I make it cheap because if you get a new bed, you still need me, because the bed bug is a hitchhiker. New ones, if they're coming in every day, which they're going to come in probably on a regular basis because you got them somehow. And so if they go to a new bed, they can form a whole colony in a bed. They're usually going to drop off and go hide behind the furniture or something first, since they only bite you when you go into deep sleep. And therefore I got them. That's why my method works so good for longevity. But they could, in theory, it's probably not likely, but in theory, get right to the bed, form a whole colony there if the room is quiet, and then they've got them again, and I get a bad reputation. So that's why I make it low cost to come out to do new beds or a new couch or anywhere where people might fall asleep. And so they get the, the new bed price, and I say that not only will I do your new bed, but I'll touch up the house as well. Because what I find is people don't always clean it properly, and they suck it up with an attachment or do something wrong, and that way I can fix it and reiterate to them that it needs to be left where you don't see it. So anyways, I like that because I want to build a good reputation. I want to help people. I want it to be perfect. I don't want anyone to fall through the cracks. So I make it low, the price. I go and I do their home, and it was amazing. The whole upstairs was all painted brand new. It was an attic converted, and so it had like these two big, huge closets that were only like, you couldn't stand in them because the attic peaked, and they were just like before jammed and closed. They were completely empty, and it was like there wasn't a dirty clothes anywhere in the house. The whole house practically was straightened up. They were still bringing the mattress out because their bedroom had too much stuff in it to put a mattress down, so they were still doing that. But the kitchen had been redone, the whole upstairs. And I mean, it was like the whole house was in order. And I was going, this is the same house with dog poop from their dogs between the mattresses in the 9-year-old's room, and with chewed holes through the mattress from the dogs. And I'm saying, am I in the same place? And so I gave the lady the literature, and I said, I have this new pamphlet for you that I didn't give you last year when I came. This is from Wikipedia, and it shows you all the nasty microbes that are in your home that, because of the positive charge of the dust that I'm going to make, neutralizes, and you're going to actually get sick less because I've treated it. It has a huge benefit for your home. And so I give her this pamphlet, and you know what she said to me? She said, before you treated last year, I had been so sick that I hadn't worked in several years. I caught everything, every cold, every flu. I was constantly sick. And I'm thinking to myself, not that at the time. It was a few days before I really put this together. And a few days later, I'm thinking to myself, that's why the house is in such great order now. But she said to me, I've only been sick once in the last year since you treated. And I was shocked. I said, that's what's supposed to happen. That's what I've been reading on paper. And thank God the state of Michigan forced me to get a license and to take the test for poison, which I now have a license. I haven't actually got it in the mail yet. But I passed the test last month for it. And when I was seeing all the nasty stuff in the home, that's when I started to make this, and I started to read this pamphlet about it, because I realized how healthy I was making the home, and I didn't even realize it until I studied the poison manuals for the pest control license. And so anyways, I made the new pamphlet, and when I was there, I gave her one, and she said she'd only been sick once. Now, her daughter was in the kitchen, and she says to her, Mom, no, you've been sick twice this last year. And so, but the contrast between how few times she had been sick, and remember, she has multiple sclerosis, and prior to me treating the home the year before was amazing. And I've had other stories that aren't as dramatic as that, but it's just because this one, the poison companies wouldn't even take the job. It was so bad, so much clutter, and I did a worse home than that. Not as far as dirt and dog feces and all of that, but as far as clutter, just the other day. And I've done many like that. I mean, just incredible, the hoarders that I have been in. And I imagine I'm doing their jobs because the poison companies can't even dent that. They just can't manage that. And so the worst of the worst, if you've got the worst infestation, I'm your man. But anyways, and I don't charge any extra if it's more difficult, and sometimes an hour and a half job might take me 5 hours. I don't care. I gave them a price, I'm doing the job, and it's not going to go up. So be confident in what I tell you. And so, it's a reputation that I want to build, because I want to go home, but I want to build this business, and I want to leave it to my son before I go, because I don't think anybody's ever going to do what I'm doing. I just don't think they're going to do it. There's too much money in it, and I'm going to explain why after I finish about this lady being so healthy. I learned then from real experience the difference, but it wasn't until a week later when I realized what it was like in that home the year prior. And I said, wow, I didn't think of it when I was treating that home, but the year prior, I did think of it a little bit, because when I was in the attic, I saw how beautiful the upstairs were, all freshly painted, new carpet. It was beautiful. And then I opened those two closets on either side, and they were empty. And I'm thinking, wow, these things were jammed with clothes. And I did, that registered with me. But it wasn't until I started thinking about it a week or two later, I said, this lady's been working. This lady got healthy. She's been taking care of her home, and it's transformed. And I thought to myself, what a wonderful thing this is. This powder is powerful, powerful. And before I tell you about the poison and why the epidemic is going up 100% every year, I want to tell you about another lady, a really nice lady, Amina. Amina, very nice lady. She's about, I imagine, 40, 45 years old, really nice lady. Did her home. She was a referral from someone I did who saw one of my signs in Pontiac, and I did her home, and she lived in Keego Harbor, and she had a very small bedroom, but she had this huge, beautiful bed. And I remember, I was like, wow, you know, I could hardly work in that darn room. It was so small, and the bed was so big, and it's like, it was really a difficult job. And she calls me 6 weeks later, and she says to me, no, it wasn't as a result of a call. I was doing her mother-in-law's house. She came to visit because I was giving her some juices for someone in her family that was having dialysis, giving them some of the teas that I make for their blood type and some skin creams and powders. So she had come over when I was treating from her referral, her mother-in-law's home. So she came over, and she was just talking with everybody there. The lady who was going through the kidney dialysis was there, and her son and her mother-in-law, me. I had just finished doing the townhouse, and I had brought some juices for the girl, and I was talking to her about eating the dirt and how healthy it would be for her and help her in her condition. And Amina says to me that every morning, was just telling the group, not me. She never mentioned this to me, but she was telling the group, she said, every morning, because I think I had mentioned to them how I have asthma and how good it is for the dust mites. But anyways, she was saying to me, or to them, and I was listening, she said, when he came and treated before that, since I was 14, and remember I said she's like 40, 45, she said every morning she'd wake up and the same thing would happen to her. She would have 10 to 15 minutes of runny nose, blowing her nose, watery eyes, you know, really uncomfortable, just terrible, terrible bout allergic. You know, it didn't matter what time of year it was. But it was always 10 to 15 minutes, and then it would go away. Heavy blowing her nose and sniffles and watery eyes, and really felt bad. But it was every morning since she was 14, and she said, and it had been 6 weeks by that point, she said, hadn't come back. Went away the day before, hadn't come back. Also, it happened to be Christmas time this year, and her husband's working in Bay City during the week and only coming home on the weekends. Well, he came home on W-E-D-N-E-S-D-A-Y because Christmas fell on F-R-I-D-A-Y. The names of the days of the week are names of demons, and Shemoth, Exodus 23:13 says, do not let the names of the demons cross your lips. So I spell them. But anyway, he came back on W-E-D, and she said he has really severe asthma and has a rescue inhaler that he uses at least twice a day. And so she said when he got ready to go back to following S-U-N-D-A-Y, that he asked her where his rescue inhaler was, and she said, honey, it's right there on the dresser in the room. He didn't know it until he got ready to go back to work that he hadn't used it the whole time he was there. And I have my own experience having asthma, and other people have told me things, but nobody has told me a story as dramatic as that. And so, you know, I just feel good about the treatment. I know how healthy it is. And it's like the poisons. I can't prove why they're bad, and I can't prove why what I do is good. I just know from my experience that it is good. And I know that God would not let me harm anyone. He wouldn't, because I obey Him. I read His Word 3 hours a day according to the law of fruit trees. And what that means is that I read an hour from the Old Testament in the morning, but I read what I read out loud, and I read it 3 times. I read 126 verses 3 times for 5 days out loud, and then I go to the next 126 verses, and it takes you exactly 3.5 years to read the Bible that way, almost, you know, a day or two either way. And it says in Daniel 7:25, my people, S-A-T-A-N, will have power over my people for 1,260 days. Well, 3.5 Jewish years on a 360-day calendar is 1,260 days. In 7:25 in the book of Daniel, it actually says time and a half time. But that period of 3.5 years is spoken of 4 different ways in the Bible. It's called time and a half time. It's called year, 2 years and a half year. It's called 1,260 days, and it's called 42 months. It's all referring to the same thing. And so I realized, you know, about probably 15, 16 years ago, after I've been doing it for 19 years, that I learned every word of God I got through the Bible one time reading this way. It's called the law of fruit trees. And I'm telling you this so that you'll understand why I understand what the plague is, why I understand how to approach the solving of it, and why my relationship with God is the only reason I'm able to do this. It's the only reason. He's given this to me because of me humbling myself and taking responsibility for what I allowed to come into my own home, of which I am responsible for. So this is how it came about for me. But the knowledge, in the book of Hosea, it says, my people perish for a lack of knowledge. So think about it. I've been reading the Bible 3 hours a day for 19 years. So eventually I'm going to start to understand the material. It takes 3.5 years with this method called the Law of Fruit Trees to read it one time. An hour from the Old Testament in the morning, an hour from the Gospels in the afternoon, an hour from the Epistles in the evening. The first 7 years I read the apocryphal books in your Catholic Bible as well, and I didn't have any days off. And there's a 7-year compact in Daniel 9:24 through 27, and that 7-year compact means that I read 7 days a week for then, and then I became a priest. God began to work in me, and now He'll finish it. From then on, I'm a priest, so I get the Sabbaths off. I don't read 1 day a week on the Sabbath. I get 1 day a month off. It's called the New Moon Feast. I don't read that day. And I have 19 holiday days each year: Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkoth, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. These 19 holidays, I don't read on those days either. Those days are days where I talk about God the whole day, and I talk about Scripture, and I do those subjects. But I'm a priest because this is His method for making one, and that's why now after the first 7 years, and now I'm in my 19th year, almost my 20th year, a couple of months and I'll be into my 20th year, I read this way. And that's why I see things differently, and especially when it comes to one of the 3 plagues in the Bible, sword, pestilence, and famine. Plague, bedbugs, is one of them. Okay, so what I'm about to tell you is not to blame the poison companies. They don't know what I'm about to tell you. They don't know this. And there's no malice on their part, but this is what my experience is telling me, and I'm telling you, this is what the Bible is telling me. And the reason why they're going up 100% every year, and they're going to continue to go up 100% every year, and that is why I'm saying people are not going to do what I do. They're not going to, because of sin. They're not going to repent. They're not going to turn from sin. And so it's not going to stop. They're going to go up 100% every year. Okay? It doesn't mean I can't stop them. It just means that that's just, and it's because that's what plagues are for. Okay? It's not unjust for a person to get bed bugs. It's a just punishment for whatever it is, for whatever crime it is. And I know that. But God is merciful, and He will give you relief. Remember what Hosea said, we perish for a lack of knowledge. So what's going on is the bedbug does not move unless it smells. But it's 2 distinct instincts. The first one is smells any blood, dog, cat, human. That triggers a hitchhike mechanism, so they move around really well. And that's why the people in the industry think that's the reason they're going up 100% every year. Also, since 1974, when DDT was outlawed, there was almost 30 years of no cases of reported bedbugs in this country, but we were also poisoning the earth because of the long-lasting, it was also a powder, residual effect of DDT, so they outlawed it. Since then, they've come back, and 100% every year since then, 1974. So they believe they're just spreading because of their hitchhike instinct, and that's true, but there's more to the story. Second instinct is also blood, but it's a very slight difference in the smell, because it's when you go into REM sleep, 2 to 3 hours after you go to sleep. It's called REM sleep. So think about that for a second. The smell of blood on a dog, cat, or human, and the smell of you going into a deep sleep, how much different can it be? It's very slight. So when the poison company, or when you use that home remedy, the balm or any of the treatments, even my powder with pest control in it, whether it be geranium, which is natural, or a poison, which you can get them both ways, I would never use, they put that near there, they can't smell that distinction because of the smell of the treatment, you see? And so they don't think there's a food source, so they start moving around because they can still hitchhike. They still have that mechanism. That instinct still works. And so they go to other rooms, and then they go to work, and they go to school. And that's why they're spreading. It's actually the home remedies that are causing it. It's the poisons that are doing it. And that's why I say it's not conscious on their part. It's the reality of what's going on. It's the reality. This is what's happening. And so I come in, No smell, no taste. They come, they die. It protects you for the future. Yes, it's messy. So what? It's counterintuitive. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't look clean, but it is. And so, may Yahweh, may Ahyah, open your mind to understand, not so I can make money, but so that you can be relieved from the plague. And a word of advice, you can make that transition between bugs and no bugs much quicker, much safer, and much more economically if you also ask God for His help. And I've had wonderful people, poor people that would be suffering continually because they can't afford the poison company that God has sent to me, and I know He sent them to me because it's the most incredible way that they even found me. No, how's anybody going to find me? I have a website, but you know how hard it is to compete with all the money in these major pest control companies? I can't compete with them. The only reason I have a video is because I tried to advertise with and linking it and doing the right thing, and eventually it'll grow. Most of my jobs are just referrals. They're referrals from people that I already worked for, and I work for the poor. And I do want to give you this one little story about how if you ask God for help, He'll send you to me or to somebody who knows what I know. It doesn't have to be me. He will help you, not me. It's Him that cures the plague, not me. I am just fortunate that I get to do this kind of work. I get to help people for a living. Isn't that wonderful? I wouldn't be working if it wasn't that case. I'd be telling Bible stories. And not that I'm lazy. I can outwork any 3 guys. I'm 50 years old and don't even have wrinkles. I'm over 50, almost 60. And super strong and super healthy thanks to eating this powder. Other things, the kosher dietary laws mostly. But anyways, the main thing about God is that He'll help. You have to pray to Him. If you're praying to Lord, that's the name of a demon. It's not God. And if you're praying to Aalah, it's not God. It's a demon. These are not God's names. They're not appropriate titles for them. You can look in the book of Hosea and you can see that too, or you can watch other videos on the name and you can see what I'm saying. You have to pray to His name. His Son's name is Yahweh Shua. He wants to be called. His title is Yahweh. You can call Him God. That'll work, as long as your heart is right. But get Him involved in it as well and get relief. And so the one last story I want to tell you is about this lady. I don't work on the Sabbath. I shut my phone off. I don't work on the new moon. I shut my phone off. I don't work during the 7-day holiday of Passover, the 8 days of Sukkot, and the last great day, or any of the Jewish holidays, Shavuot, Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement. I have the phone off. And so when I was on a week vacation up in Fairview, staying at my friend I was telling you about earlier, who's 80 now and has the second bout of lung cancer, I was staying at her cabin, her and her husband, Ken, who, by the way, when I was a kid, gave me one of my first jobs, and she's been my mom's friend forever, and now she's my best friend. But anyways, and so I was staying there for a week. Well, this one lady, her name is Bianca. I just love her. She's so pretty, and she has a really nice husband, Isa. Yeah, he's really nice, and 3, I think it's 3 wonderful kids, and she's really a sweet, sweet lady. But the way she found me was really just miraculous. She ended up getting bed bugs from her son at school. We're pretty sure of that, but it's a fool's errand to try to find him or even to guess where you got him. You're probably going to be wrong. So we're probably wrong about that. But what happened is that she saw my sign in Pontiac, and she read it. You know, she didn't have bed bugs, and she was saying, So she took note of it in her mind. She didn't think much about it. She didn't have bed bugs. And it says, immediate bed bug relief, 252 complete. And then my phone number. That's all it says. And so the next day, she discovers bed bugs from her son coming from school. And it really traumatized her. And so she goes back to the sign that day, gets my phone number and calls, but I don't talk to her for like 2 or 3 days because I didn't have my phone on. I just checked my messages like every 2 or 3 days. And so I called her up and I said, I don't work during the holiday, but I'll come. She had called me, left 3 messages, and I got them all. Please come now, please come now. And I actually have 24-hour emergency service. I'm the only one that does, because it's the only one that stops them right away, immediately. And so there's no sense in the other companies having 24-hour emergency service. They're not going to stop them immediately anyway. So anyways, I do. And so I felt really bad for her. And so when my week finished, she was my first job, and I did. And we're friends now. We talk from time to time. And she's actually working in a daycare right now, and lots of bed bugs are coming in. She knows she's safe because her house is safe, but she's trying to get the one who runs that place to have me treat. But they're weary of the mess. They don't want to make a mess. And I can do it in commercial settings like that, where it can only be behind stuff or where you don't see it. And that's really good enough. And, you know, protect areas where they might take a nap. But normally people aren't going to sleep there at night. So it's not really a place to worry about getting bit. It's a place where they'll spread. Okay, I do know a story from a friend of mine of a bar here in Pontiac that was closed down because even though people don't sleep in a bar, they were so bad in the bar they couldn't get rid of them. I think there was an apartment upstairs, which was part of the problem. And the customers kept taking them home, and he couldn't do anything about it. It was like thousands of dollars to treat the place commercially with a poison company, and he couldn't do it. He shut the bar down. Or it didn't work. He did it several times. I forget the story, but she sees my sign the day before she gets them. She gets them. She calls me that day. And then I didn't treat her for about a week. And by the time the week come, boy, she was so happy to get rid of them. So that's why we're friends now, because she was so thrilled. Couldn't have afforded, I don't think, the $1,000 to $2,000 that it would have taken for the other companies. So I'm not disparaging them. I'm just saying that because of the instinct of smell and how a poison interrupts that ability to smell the REM sleep blood, that is what I know. Not something I can prove. That's just the reality of it. And that is why, because people ought to deal with this through prayer, that's not going to stop. That's going to continue. They are not going to understand what I'm going to do. They're not going to understand it because they can't. You have to be right with Yah. You have to be right with God to understand this. And my customers don't need to understand it. They just need relief. I understand it, and because of God's law of repentance, the industry is not going to change. I am not going to change it. But what I am going to do is I'm going to bring relief to whoever God wants me to, and God bless you for your relationship with Him. There's microbes everywhere. Get them out of your house. Call No More Bites tonight. It's not proof, but man, it is relief. One last thing I want to show you. This is water. This is fossil shell flour, diatomaceous earth. See? Just like you can batter your chicken with it. Actually, since my friend who had cancer had it on the counter next to her flour, and one of her granddaughters battered some chicken at a big dinner they had there, and when they cleaned up, they realized that she had used this, and they battered their chicken with it, and everybody, like 10, 12 people, ate the whole meal. Nobody ever noticed that the chicken was great. But it's fossil shell flour. I mean, you can batter your chicken with it. You put it in your soup. Best way to do it is just a couple of scoops, lukewarm water, swish it around your mouth and swallow it every time you brush your teeth. That's the best way. But you see, it's like microscopic shards of glass, but to us, it's just the softest flour. It's white. It won't stain anything. But this stuff is a miracle. It's just a gift from, that ain't gonna work, from Yah, and it's by far the healthiest thing I do. You know why? Because it's going to remove all the poisons. We are being poisoned by everything, by the cell phones against our ears, by the electrical wires, by the dish soap, by the bar soap, by every cleaner, by the toilet bowl cleaner, by scrubbing bubbles, by, sorry for mentioning anything specifically, by all of these cleaning products and all of these antibacterials. We're being poisoned, absorbing it through the largest organ in our body, the skin. This, my friend, can heal a plague, and it can also rid your body of all the nasties, all the poisons. May Yahweh bless your understanding. Here's to you, YouTube.